welcome to Season 5, Episode 3, Discover the Finger Lakes, and I am at Letchworth State Park, and we are going to talk about Mary Jemison, who came over here to America with her parents and was captured during the French and Indian War, then to be adopted by the Seneca Indians. Very interesting story of the white woman of the Genesee. William Pryor Letchworth first became interested in Native American culture after hearing his father's stories about Corn Planter, the Seneca chief, meeting with Letchworth's great-uncle John Letchworth, a Quaker preacher in Philadelphia. Sensitive to the injustices that Native Americans suffered on reservations and their fast disappearing cultural heritage, Letchworth became determined to collect and preserve Native American artifacts. One of his most significant acquisitions was the Revolutionary War-era Seneca Council House, which he rescued from decay in Genesee, New York, and moved here in 1871. Mary Jemison, 1743 to 1833, was born during a voyage from Ireland to the United States. Captured during the French and Indian War, she was adopted into the Seneca Nation and chose to remain a Seneca, marrying and raising a family in the Genesee Valley. Following the Revolutionary War, Mary was awarded a large reservation at the Gardow Flats, located in what is now the central part of Letchworth State Park. She lived there until 1831, when she moved to Buffalo Creek Reservation. She died in 1833 and was buried on the reservation. In 1874, William Pryor Letchworth brought her remains back to the Genesee Valley, where she spent most of her life. After the Buffalo Creek Reservation was sold and the cemetery was unprotected from vandals, pieces of Mary's gravestone were broken off and taken as souvenirs. Concerned, several of Mary Jemison's grandsons contacted Letchworth and asked his help preserving her grave. Letchworth had her remains moved here to the council grounds and placed in a new casket inside a stone sarcophagus. Letchworth had Mary Jemison's gravestone installed in 1874 when he moved her remains here to the council grounds. This is going to be interesting. This is the council grounds. So this, I believe, is Mary's cabin. So this log cabin, which originally stood on the Gardow Flats by the Genesee River, was built about 1800 by Mary Jemison, the white woman of the Genesee, for her second daughter Nancy. Okay, so this is for her daughter Nancy. And a nearby cabin also built by her. She lived about 35 years. So she lived 78 years of her life as a captive and adopted member of the Senecas, during which she became the wife of a chief and gained great influence in their councils. to the memory of Mary Jemison, whose home during more than 70 years of a life of strange vicissitude was among the Senecas upon the banks of the river, and whose history inseparably connected with that of this valley, and has caused her to become known as the White Woman of the Genesee. This ancient Seneca council house that once stood on the Genesee River in days antedating the American Revolution. In it gathered the war parties that devastated the frontiers, and before it their helpless prisoners ran the gauntlet. Around its council fires sat famous warriors and chiefs. For its preservation, it was carefully removed to its present location by William Pryor Letchworth, and was rededicated October 1st, 1872 by the last Indian Council on the Genesee. Now this is the viewing pavilion. The dates on it is 1873 to 1913. This rustic viewing pavilion provided a spot where visitors could contemplate the view of the railroad trestle and the upper falls. This was not the only pavilion that was here. There was another pavilion called the Big Tree Pavilion that housed a section of a huge white oak trunk 11 feet in diameter. And the tree slab was permanently damaged in 1914 while it was undergoing repair. Now this site, D-U-It-Gaho, valley begins to widen. Seneca Indian Village, and this is the spring used by Mary Jemison that is nearby. Okay, now this location here, where we're at, the sign where I was at before was the area where Mary had her spring at, and you could see here on this plaque where the cross is at. That is where her spring was at, according to this, and where the village is at. Now, right here, also points to the location of her son, Tom. Or, sorry, excuse me, her grandson, Tom. His cabin was built somewhere down there in the 1800s. So that's kind of interesting. And it says to the east was once the Seneca Indian village of Da-Yo-It-Ga-O, and which that means valley begins to widen. So that's kind of neat. And we're going to go here and look at this plaque right here. Okay, so looking at this right here, Squawky Hill Overlook. And if you look, you could see pictures on this board mentioning the Xerox building in Rochester, a water tower, industry, New York, the college at Genesee, and see the salt mine wherever that's at, and Interstate 390. So this is very interesting. But we're going to read here. It says that the land before you was part of the Squawky Hill Reservation, one of 11 reservations established by the Big Tree Treaty in 1797, which I'm going to talk about later. After the reservation was sold to the Ogden Land Company in 1826, most of the native people moved to larger reservations. Okay, and so here is some maps here of Buffalo Tom's Jemison's cabin, which is Mary Jemison's grandson, or they call him Buffalo Tom. And so right here it says that Squawky Hill Reservation, as surveyed by Augustus Porter in 1798. On the map, it shows that. The arrow shows the approximate location of Buffalo Tom log cabin, built in 1818. So, and then there's the map there. I have no idea where that's at. Somewhere down there, I would assume, somewhere in a general location. But it says here that Buffalo Tom was the grandson of Mary Jemison, who was adopted by the Senecas. The location of his cabin is noted on this map, as well as the Squawky Hill Reservation map for cross-reference. Site location, USGS map, New York State, Livingston County. Okay, and so here's the map right here, if you can see it. And Letchworth State Park, and then the location of the cabin. So something else interesting here that I found, and I found this to be really neat, is this platform pipe showing the influence of the Adena people was found on the Squawky Reservation. And as you know, many places that I've been to, different forts, there was a pre-civilization of Adenas. There was one, they said that there was one up at Bear Hill. Not sure, but that's what they're saying. So prior to the reservation period, there is evidence that this area was occupied by several other cultures. Local archaeological finds indicate strong influences of Adena Hopewell, which are mound builders. And it says they're from Ohio. Of course, you know that. I've been to Ohio and been to Hopewell. And it's in the mounds there are really fascinating. So anyway, this is Squawky Hill Overlook. Just thought you might be interested in seeing this. Now, the Treaty of Big Tree was a formal treaty signed in 1796 between the Seneca Nation and the United States, in which the Seneca relinquished their rights to nearly all of their traditional homeland in New York State, nearly 3.5 million acres. In the 1788 Phelps and Gorham Purchase, the Iroquois had previously sold rights to their land between Seneca Lake and the Genesee River. The Treaty of Big Tree signed away their rights to all the territory west of the Genesee River, except 10 small tracts of land for 100,000. Now, down here is the actual reservations. We've talked about Squawky Hill, where Mary's grandson had a cabin, and Gardeau, where Mary lived. And so that is quite a bit of land that she owned. Okay, so the Gardeau Grant of 1797. At the Big Treaty of 1797, the Seneca people reserved lands that would be known as the Gardeau Reservation. After the treaty, while the council fire still burned, they issued a grant of land to Mary Jemison, who lived with her family at Gardeau. And the following is the text of the treaty executed at the time of the Treaty of Big Tree, by which the Gardeau Reservation was set apart to Mary Jemison. Now, I'm not going to read all this, but I will talk a little bit about this. Now, at the time of all this, there were chief warriors of the Seneca Nation for and in consideration of the sum of $1 to us in hand paid by Mary Jemison. Also, unto her, the said Mary Jemison, her heirs, and assigns forever one certain parcel or tract of land, being and lying on the Genesee River, beginning at the mouth of the Steep Hill Creek, and running a due east line till it strikes the old path. And so she was given this land. Okay, so I went to the northern border of the Gardeau tract, set aside for Mary Jemison, white woman of the Genesee, during the Big Tree Treaty. And here it is on the map. So here is the southern Gardeau tract border, the south border of the reservation set aside for Mary Jemison, white woman of the Genesee, during the Big Tree Treaty. Okay, so you see the northernmost border of the tract. Right here is the southern border of the Gardeau tract. There are two more other tracts, the east and the west, which I did not go to, but I will show them here, as well as the north and the southern border of the Gardeau tract for Mary Jemison. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Very fascinating story about a historical woman from New York, with her statue behind me, as you see. So anyway, a lot of historic rustic buildings here. Really enjoyed coming here and learning about this area even more. So now, you have to come here. You cannot leave without seeing the waterfalls, and I've been here before. And so, to close out this video, I'll show you the waterfalls.